Hey guys, Michael Hyatt here. Welcome to the Michael Hyatt Show. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. This is the pre-show, and this just gives everybody a chance to log on. But while we're waiting and while you're here, please go ahead and share this with your friends. We'd love to have them on with us too. All you got to do is click the share button, whether you're watching on YouTube or Periscope or Facebook, and invite them to join with us. But in the meantime, where are you watching from? Tonight I'm here in my home studio in Nashville, Tennessee, actually right outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Beautiful weather. I hope it's beautiful where you guys are. I've spent the entire day on a video shoot. We're shooting some new video for Platform University. Oh my gosh. Wait till you guys see what's happening with Platform University. We basically have completely rebuilt it from the ground up. It's going to be all new. We're going to be introducing it next month. It's going to be incredible, and I'm pumped. Super excited about it. But where are you guys watching from? So I'm just over here looking on Facebook. Bonnie's from St. Louis, Jonathan from Toronto, Jeff from Mobile, Diane from Hawaii. Mobile's close to where my buddy Andy Andrews, who's going to be on tonight, is from. Tony, good to see you. Tia from Mississippi. Jessica from Margate, Florida. And let me just see here if I can get the Periscope one up. Alrighty, guys. Not seeing anything yet on YouTube, but that always takes a minute. John Rogers from Edmonton, Alberta. Fantastic. Jeff Jones from Orange Beach. I wonder if Andy knows Jeff Jones. Maybe. Randy from Gainesville. Andy whispered in my ear and he says he does. Randy from Gainesville, Martha from Florence, Ed Jutt from Tampa, Lori from Coconut Creek. Awesome. Okay, let me go over here and get another question because I want to chat before we get into this. Have you guys ever had an experience where a small change made a big difference? Have you ever had an experience where a small change made a big difference? So let me go first. So when I left Thomas Nelson about 6 years ago and I was speaking in earnest, trying to do a lot of public speaking, one of the things that I heard from my booking agent, he said, there's one small adjustment. He said, your content's fine, it's organized, your stories are great. But he said, buddy, you got to smile more. It looks like you're ticked off. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And he said, seriously, you're not smiling enough. And so I looked at the videos and I said, you're exactly right. I'm not smiling enough. I looked like I was ticked off, just like he said. So Brian would stand at the back of the auditorium whenever I was speaking, and he would just put his fingers on his face and just point up, like smile. And he did that like gig after gig after gig till I finally got the message. But I feel like that made a huge difference. It warmed up my presentations. I felt like it made me more approachable, and it made a big difference. But what about for you guys? Is there been a small change that you've made that's made a big difference in something that you're doing? Again, I'm going to go back to the comment cam here and look. Nancy says not working on LTE. I'm sorry, Nancy. Nothing I can do about that on my side. Brad is calling from or checking in from Cross Plains, Texas. Let me just see here. I'm going to go over to my notes here. And I've lost that as well. There we go. Yeah. Got to get the right note up here. Alrighty. Anything on YouTube? Nope. Always takes a second for the comments to catch up. But we're going to be talking about the little things about Andy Andrews' newest book, and I think it's going to surprise you. Gail says the sound is not great from that angle. From this angle? I guess that's what she means. I'm going to make an adjustment here on the fly. Let's see if this makes it any better, Matt. That might be just a little bit better. I think I moved my camera around. Alrighty. Rick is checking us from Lawton. Ahmed is watching from Egypt. Wow, now that's commitment. Okay, Jamie says better. Jeff says much better on the sound. Fantastic. Tia says I say hello to everyone I cross paths with. It puts me in a good mood and hopefully the other person too. Awesome. Alrighty. Guys, while we're waiting for everybody else to join, please go ahead and share this out. I'd love for you guys to invite your friends. Tonight's show is going to be spectacular. Andy Andrews is a great friend, one of my very favorite speakers, a great interview. I probably interviewed him like half a dozen times, maybe more than that, through the years, but his books are fantastic. And The Little Things is no exception. I'm going to give you another question since we didn't get a lot of answers to that one. But what most often hinders you from paying attention to the small but important details in your life and work? And I'll just go first. For me, it's often because I'm going too fast. You know, it's like the big picture stuff is there, but that's one of the reasons why I have a team, is to take care of the small stuff, because I miss stuff. And you probably do too. But what are some of the small things, or what most often hinders you from paying attention to the small but important details in your life and work? All right, we'll get started in just a minute, but go ahead and leave your comments, whether you're watching in Facebook, YouTube, or Periscope. I'd love to hear from you. Okay. Lorraine says, okay, sound now. Great. Ellen says, poor planning. Isn't that the truth? Easy to miss the small things when you don't plan for the small things. I love what Oprah says. Love is in the details. And I think that's true. People do notice. Jamie Slingerland said, loved his new book, Little Things. And Lori says, if I don't make a to-do list, I forget important things. April says they get overshadowed by the bigger things. Over on YouTube, John just made a comment. He said the sound is better with the adjustment. Good, I'm so glad. All righty, I'm not getting any comments on Periscope, but that's okay. No worries. We'll get to that eventually. In fact, I'm not even sure we're streaming on Periscope right now, Matt, and probably nothing we can do about it since we started. We just may have to miss this on Periscope. Sometimes it's flaky and doesn't work. John said, how's the weather there in Tennessee? Fantastic. Up to about 84 today, which is a little warmer than we like, but blue skies, beautiful weather, fantastic. Great weather for golf, although I'm not going to get out and play probably for another 2 weeks. Brad says, focusing on the big picture while drowning in the everyday tasks. Yeah, so easy to miss the small stuff when that happens. We got about 1:31 left. Again, let me just encourage you guys to share this out with your friends. Leave your comments all through the show in the comments section. And also, again, what hinders you from paying attention to the small stuff? Nasa says, am I the only one from Puerto Rico? Great weather here too. Yeah, you may be the only one on from Puerto Rico. I was there this spring, loved it. We were there in January. Lorraine says, if you don't take care of the little things, the big things fall apart. Yep, so true, so true. All righty. Anything else? Anything else that hinders you? Jamie, she says she's in Barceloneta, PR now. I'm not sure where that's at. I was in San Juan and Palmas del Mar in Puerto Rico. Both beautiful areas. My buddy John Lee Dumas lives there. Okay, let me just go back over here. We've got about 30 seconds left. And again, I'm going to have Andy Andrews on here in a minute, and I'm going to give him a proper introduction here in just a second. But you guys are in for a treat. If you've never heard him speak, if you've never heard him interviewed, this is going to be awesome. So we're going to get to that in about 10 seconds. Watching the countdown timer come down. All righty. And here we go, guys. So when it comes to succeeding at life, we all know you have to stay focused on the big things, right? In other words, you can't and shouldn't sweat the small stuff. Well, not so fast. According to my guest, New York Times bestselling author Andy Andrews, the small stuff does matter more than you can possibly imagine. And Andy's going to prove that to us, and he'll show us how we can pay attention to the details and give ourselves an edge when it comes to succeeding in any area of life. Hello, I'm Michael Hyatt. Welcome to my live show where each week I talk with a different thought leader about some aspect of personal development, productivity, or leadership. My goal is to help you win at work, succeed at life, and lead with confidence. Let's get started. Andy and I have been friends for more than 15 years. I've had the privilege of publishing his first book, The Traveler's Gift, and many others when I was at Thomas Nelson Publishers. The New York Times once wrote, Andy is a modern-day Will Rogers who has quietly become one of the most influential people in America. He's written 26 books, 3 of which have landed on the New York Times bestsellers list. Andy has spoken to more than 5 million people worldwide in his career, including some of the largest organizations in the world, and at the request of 4 U.S. presidents. Andy's newest book is called The Little Things, Why You Should Really Sweat the Small Stuff, and I've invited him here to talk about why the little things matter. Andy, welcome. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Mike. It is just a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I'm excited about this interview because I love all your books, and you're just such a great storyteller, and this book is no exception. But when did it dawn on you that the conventional wisdom about not sweating the small stuff was wrong?
You know, I watched a lot of the clients that I'd worked with, and they really weren't clients at that point. They were just people that I was going in to speak for, companies I was going in to speak for. And I noticed after a while that I was coming back in year after year or after 18 months. And while the response was great, some of the request for help was the same. Meaning I would ask, I'd say, so what do you need help with? What do you need me to focus on? And they'd say, well, talk about change or talk about this, or we're really going through a tough time with this. And so I would do it. And then I'd come back 18 months later and they'd ask me to do it again. And I thought, that didn't work very well, did it? And I began to notice the results weren't maybe what they should be, even though everybody seemed to be happy with them. I wasn't happy with them. And so I realized that there was something missing and that we were looking the wrong way.
So elaborate on that.
Well, everybody talks about the big picture. And I have learned, Mike, you know, I'm not a contrarian, but I do stop and wonder sometimes if this is the right direction, if everybody's going that way. And it really led me to some amazing understanding. I had to have better results. I have to have results because I'm not a celebrity. I don't have a gold medal. I don't have Super Bowl rings. I wasn't the hero of some national disaster we all remember. I'm just a husband. I'm a dad. I'm a friend. I'm a business guy. I write. I'm not particularly probably a great writer, but I'll tell you this. I know that when I go in somewhere, I do not have the advantage that Peyton Manning has. I mean, he can go in, they'll pay him a lot of money, and he can take pictures with you, and you can go home and tell everybody he was there. Me, I got to have results. I mean, I really do have to have results. If I'm going to get paid well doing what I do, I've got to have real results. And incredible results are what I was after. I was not after, the normal 20% return because I knew that it would be too easy to discount my help there. I had to have some companies doubling and tripling. I had to have some coaches getting results that were beyond the norm. And I knew that was going to come the other way. That was going to come looking in a different direction. Everybody looks for a big picture guy. Everybody wants to hire big picture people. We want to promote big picture people, but somewhere along the line, it's obvious that big picture people don't always understand the little details that have to be taken care of for the big picture to come into place. Every big picture that is ever created is created one brushstroke at a time. You know the story of Da Vinci. When Leonardo Da Vinci 500 years ago was painting the Mona Lisa, his friends were making fun of him because he had taken this small, tiny little brush, and they were saying, "Come on, dude, you gotta make a living here. You're gonna be forever painting this thing. What are you doing with that?" And he says, "I'm using this because I'm creating a masterpiece." And it's funny that 500 years ago we acknowledge that, gosh, he did. And you can go to the Louvre and look at the Mona Lisa today with a magnifying glass, and you can't even discern individual brushstrokes. It is a masterpiece of photographic quality. And the point to me is that whatever it is that you're creating in your business, with your family, your life, at the end of it all, whether it's a disaster or a masterpiece, it will have been created one moment at a time, one decision at a time, one tiny brushstroke at a time. It's the little things that make up the big things.
That's awesome. In your book, you say there's a canyon of difference between 1 and 2. Can you share the story of how this played out in the lives of Michael Phelps and some of the other Olympians?
That is an amazing thing. I got to looking at the Olympics and this whole process of people spending their lives becoming great at something. And then I realized that the only Olympians I could think of to Google were people who had won the gold medal. Even the hockey players that I knew, America only won the gold medal once in hockey, I believe. And I remember those guys, Jim Craig and Mike Eruzione, all those guys. But it was curious to me, the difference between first place and second place. All these people had spent so much time, and yet there was something that the first place people, the gold medalists, had put into the mix that the silver and bronze and all the others had not. For many of them, it was enough to be in the Olympics. You know, you've heard them say, well, that was reward enough. And for some people, they say, I'm a medalist. But there are other people who are looking for an edge. They want to go for that gold medal. And that gold medal comes with the tiniest of differential. It's amazing how many of those sports, the difference between first and second, the difference between first place and 10th place is less than a second, right?
Wow.
And with Michael Phelps, you know, we only know Michael Phelps because he won 8 gold medals in one Olympics. Now, he's won tons of gold medals. I don't know how many the guys won, but in Beijing, he won 8. And we know him because he broke Mark Spitz's record of 7. And so that 8th gold medal, he won it in 1/100th of a second. Now, I want you to think about this, Mike. I'm doing the research on this, and I said, what is 1/100th of a second? 1/100th of a second is less time than it takes for a hummingbird to flap its wing once. It's less time than it takes to blink your eye, less time than a bolt of lightning, 1/100th of a second. But here is the key. Where did that 1/100th of a second come from? Where was it created? Mm-hmm. See, a lot of people look at it in the race, but where was it created? Was it one extra swallow of coffee that morning? Was it 5 more minutes of rest the week before? Scientists have proven that thought has mass. Could it have been a thought there standing before he dove into the pool? Or could it have been the lack of a negative thought as he was swimming? I mean, you can imagine 1/100th of a second. Could there have been, if he had at one time just thought, it would have been over.
Yeah.
But that focus, and to
That's
take
amazing.
it to that. And of course, you can look at how much it was worth. It was worth $1 million. It just right there. Because Speedo gave him a check for $1 million. He donated it to charity, but for that 8th gold medal, $1 million.
Wow. I like the story that Jerry Seinfeld tells about Olympic races. I don't know if you remember this. You can't hear me?
I can't hear you.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Oh, my gosh. Can't hear me?
I'm not hearing you, Mike.
Oh, my gosh. Do you got anything there? Nothing's changed. Man, I don't know what to do. Can you guys hear me out there? Okay. Let me just make sure the people that are listening to me can hear.
Touched anything.
Let me just check here. Can my team hear me? You might check, Matt, and see in Slack if our team's saying anything. Whoops. Yeah. So some people are saying, Gail's saying she can hear us both. Great. Everything good here? Just Andy can't hear me. Well, that's That's a bummer.
Maybe we need to pull it back up and come back in.
Oh, well, why don't you go ahead and text him that?
Okay, I did. Yep.
You can't hear me? Still nothing? We're going to have him log out. Stay with us. I'm going to be right here.
Did I do something? Mike, it's me. It's me.
It is?
Yeah.
I did it. It was me.
Really?
Are you back?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was me.
What happened?
You know, I sat on the connection and I broke the connection. I'm so sorry.
I love it. See,
But,
it actually proves your thesis. The little things matter.
And look how little a thing that was.
See?
So,
I mean, that was all made up, people. This was all part of the show. So we're professionals here.
The people who know me are going, no, we know Andy's kind of an idiot.
No, that's right. No, so I was going to tell you about Jerry Seinfeld tells his story on his comedy CD where he said the races between first and second in the Olympics are so close that if the guy that comes in number 2 has a pimple, he could win.
That's true. That is really true. Certainly in the case of 1/100th of a second.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so again, back to the book. You tell the story about Napoleon's victory at Waterloo right before he lost. Can you share that story with us and why it's important?
It's an amazing story because, and I love to tell it to people and say, remember Napoleon won at Waterloo? And they're like, wait, I thought he lost. What? Well, he did lose, but first he won. And it was a very tiny little reason why. I mean, here he outnumbered Wellington and had more cannons, more men. But back in that time, remember the cannons were fired from the breech, and so they were front loaded to put in, and there was a touch hole, a little bitty hole that they would put the flame on that would ignite the powder and shoot the guns. And so one of the most important jobs, I guess, or turned out to be that way, was to carry nails, because when they would push the enemy off their cannons, somebody was supposed to pound those nails down into that hole, rendering the cannons useless. And so here's Napoleon standing up on the hill with his gray horse, watching his men literally overwhelm Wellington and push the British troops off their cannons, captured all their cannons. And he watched this going back and forth, and the British troops pushed the French back away from one of their cannons, one of their artillery pieces, turned it back on their enemy, captured another one. And so literally he's up on the hill screaming, the nails, spike the cannon. And they had forgotten to take the nails into battle. And so here is this unbelievable, we now know, we call it Napoleon's Waterloo. And yet he won before he lost. And all this happened just because of a fistful of nails, or the lack of a fistful of nails.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's another great historical example of what happens when you don't pay attention to the small stuff. And by the way, for those of you watching this, if you're finding this helpful, I want to encourage you to share it by clicking the share button right below this video. And in addition to that, leave your comments, because we've got Andy here and we're going to be taking questions all through this interview. So if you've got one, give it to us. We want to hear from you. Andy, when you go back to that situation with Napoleon at Waterloo, and you see that he lost because of a fistful of nails, and that happens so often in history, why is it that people say, don't sweat the small stuff? It sure seems to me like the small stuff matters.
The small stuff matters more than people. In fact, I really believe that the gains I have made in what we laughingly refer to as my career have been because I have been looking for the small stuff for a long time. I have I have a piece of, a part in 9 college football national championships in a row, either with my material or working with the teams or the coaches or whatever. And it's funny, Polly asked me one time, I got off the phone with one of the coaches, and she said, does he know that you only played football in the 6th grade? And I'm like, well, yeah, I think so. But there are little bitty things that I notice that help them that can turn games. You know, if you look at how many games are won or lost just by a touchdown, or how many basketball games are won or lost by a point or two, or certainly baseball games, it is amazing the little bitty things that matter. Now, here's what I do, Mike, and this is why those little things I think have come to mean so much to me. Is I have to have results, like I said, and so I told somebody the other day, you know, what I really do is I help people compete at a level the competition doesn't know there's a game going on. If you look at companies and churches, and individuals, teams, organizations, everybody competes the same way. There is an industry standard. There is a way it's done. And there's a best practices. And because of this, everybody kind of does the same thing. You know, there isn't a coach in America, from the mini mites to the NFL, that doesn't at one point say to his team during the season, you know, today I want everything you got. And just, if you can give me everything from the snap to the whistle, just from the time that ball is snapped to the whistle is blown. Well, that's great. But the coach on the other sidelines just said the same thing. Everybody has to be good from the snap to the whistle. And even if you are really better than them from the snap to the whistle, the best you can usually hope for is to beat them by a little bit every time. But if you can figure out a way to legitimately compete, not just from the snap to the whistle, but from the whistle to the next snap, while everybody else is just standing around, you'll run them off the field. And this can be done in business. This can be done in our personal lives, with our children, with our families. This can be done with teams and team sports. And in almost every case I have found, it doesn't even have anything to do with what most people think your business is.
Awesome. I mean, that makes sense.
You want me to unpack that?
Yeah, please.
All right. Here's what I'm talking about. There was one of the biggest successes that I had first with a company was helping a company increase by 400% in a year. It was a national real estate company. We took one of their states right in the middle of their brothers and sisters and right in the middle of their competition, and worked with them for a year, and they increased their sales 400%. Now, I don't really know anything about real estate. And in fact, then I knew less. I mean, in my adult life, I've lived in 3 places. I've lived under a pier, I've lived in a condominium, and I've lived in the house we live in now. We've lived here for 25 years, and people say, don't you want to get another house? No, I'm fine. Don't you want to get a bigger house? No, we're fine. You know, a bigger house, just a longer walk to the bathroom. We're fine. And so I don't really know. I haven't even made a lot of real estate transactions. And so when I sat down with these guys, I knew I was going to have to look in a different direction. I was looking for a little bitty thing that nobody else was looking at. I had to figure out how to compete in a way the competition didn't know there's a game going on. So I asked them, I said, so, you know, how does this work? And they said, well, you know, you sell it, you make money. You don't sell it, you don't make money. It's pretty much, straightforward. And I said, so you just go out there and sell all the real estate? I see signs everywhere, so everybody just sells. And they said, no, you know, there's the listing thing. I said, okay, so what's the listing thing? And they said, well, you know, if you become the listing agent, if you have somebody contract with you to list their property, then if you sell it, you take all the commission. But if somebody else sells that property, you still get 50% of it because you listed the property. And I said, okay, well, so what we have to do is list all the properties. And they said, well, that's easier said than done. But in effect, it's what we did, because all we had to figure out was why people list the properties that they do. Well, why do they list them with the agents that they list them with? Why do they do what they do? And there's the best practices in real estate, and most people think they understand why this is done. This is why real estate people put their pictures up on bulletin boards, and they, put their cards, in rushes. They all do the same thing. They go to networking things, and they all pass each other's cards around and waste money on cards, I guess. Because if you really look at why somebody lists the house the way they do, nobody goes and forms a graph and takes the Tri-County area of the 90 best real estate people and forms it into 10 and then runs the graph again for 3 months and then personally interviews somebody. And nobody does that. It comes down to, who gets to list your property? Your buddy who sells real estate. Mm-hmm. And you say, really? You're going to let them list your property? I say, well, yeah, I am. So he's the best in the area? No, not really. So he's on a hot streak? No. But you're going to let him list your property? Look, I hadn't got any choice. I wouldn't dare let anybody else list my property. You got to understand, this is the guy who came to my house at 2 o'clock in the morning several years ago, and he kept my kids when I took my wife to the hospital. He got them up the next morning and made them lunch, took them to school. I wouldn't dare list my house with anybody else. Oh, so what you're saying is that several years ago at 2 o'clock in the morning, this guy was competing for your business at a level the other real estate people in the area didn't know a game was going on. Now, if you can understand how it's done inadvertently, you can do it on purpose. And the idea is to create value in the lives of other people. Far beyond business. See, people compete with price and product. And yet, have you ever bought something and you paid more for it than you had to? You knew you paid more for it. You willingly paid more for it. Have you ever gone to more trouble than you've ever had to go to get it? You could have ordered it online, but you waited a week and drove across town to get it and paid more for it. Really? I mean, it doesn't sound very smart, and yet we all do it. But in every single case, it has something to do with expressing loyalty or gratefulness to somebody for something that didn't have anything to do with the business. Yeah, I know Walmart's right across the street, but let me tell you what she did for my grandmother 14 years ago. I will always go there. I will always send people there. Yeah, I know there's 7 pharmacies between me and them, but this is the guy who would come around when my boys were little. He would come around the counter and shake hands with my boys. And look, nobody's going to hire my kids because they know how to fist bump. I had to have somebody else in town, teaching them how to shake hands like a man. I couldn't be the only one doing it. I will always go to that pharmacy. That guy's been so valuable in my life. This is what we do.
Wow. So here's what just to summarize this, to distill it, what I hear you saying is that when we add value in unexpected ways that may not even be related to the game we're playing, that creates a relationship, and out of that relationship is how we create more business.
Right. Everybody knows how to do the business.
Yep.
I mean, I've got a client right now. There's like my favorite people, and it's a Fairway Mortgage, and they've been 19 years to 5.4 billion in business, and after a year they went to 11.2 billion, and then 17.4 billion, and they're ahead of that pace now. And they didn't acquire anybody or anything. And this is, I mean, the rates are what the rates are. Mm-hmm. And so the only way these people are doing what they're doing is because of who they are. And they'll tell you mortgages are what we do. It's not who we are. They get the business because of who they are.
That's powerful. Okay, let's take a few questions here because we've got some coming in. Debbie Morello said on Facebook, she said, I'm the opposite lately. I'm blowing away the small stuff and putting off the big stuff. Currently working through some potential fears about my end game. Sigh. I don't think it's a question, just a comment. Paul Frederick said, thank you, Michael, for having Andy on your show. Loved the book. And then on Periscope, thanks for going live with this interview. Awesome stuff, which tells me we're on Periscope. I didn't think we were. Okay, here's a question on Facebook from Chinky Tan. He asked, if there's only one mistake that you have done in your life, what is one lesson you can teach us? So is there a mistake that you did that has a lesson embedded in it?
Man, you haven't got enough time there's not enough bandwidth for me to talk about all my mistakes. But there have been things that I have, fortunately, because I've surrounded myself with people like you, Mike, and like your wife, Gail, that I've been able to grab hold of them pretty quickly. And every one of the mistakes that have, you know what? Let me answer it this way. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but mistakes were pretty easy to come back from. Where I have had problems is in the choices that I have made sometimes. Because there is a big difference in a choice and a mistake. And some people get stuck and they stay stuck for years and sometimes for the rest of their lives because they don't understand the difference in a mistake and a choice. If you make a mistake, you can pretty much say, I'm so sorry. And you can go on, and because people look and go, yeah, I'm there for the grace of God, a mistake. Because a mistake is like if you take a walk in the woods and it gets dark and you get lost and you stumble off a cliff and you break your arm. That's a mistake. But if you make a choice, it's different. You can't handle it that way. Making a choice would be like going into the woods when your mama told you not to go in those woods, but you think you can get in and out and she'll never know. And you get lost and you fall off a cliff and break your arm. Well, that wasn't a mistake. You made a choice to do something you knew you shouldn't have done. And now here we go. But people treat those choices. Sometimes they'll say, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. And it's like, dude, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice to do something you knew you shouldn't have done. And while a mistake, you can say, I'm so sorry. And people totally give you grace there. When you say, I'm sorry, and they know you've made a choice, people somehow think, well, I don't know if you're sorry or if you're just sorry you got caught. And so only will you forgive me can press a reset button on a choice. And I know this was about my biggest mistake, but I will tell you this. One of the greatest discoveries I have made as a human being is that even though I'm a dad, there are times that I make choices that I need to go to my sons. In fact, I did this yesterday morning, Mother's Day morning. Because Saturday afternoon I had gotten very impatient with Adam, and I barked at him a couple of times, and I even told him later. I said, hey buddy, listen, you gotta pick it up. You've got to pay attention, and you can't. And I kind of made an excuse for myself, but man, I couldn't get over that all night. And that next morning before we went to church, I got the guys together and I said, look, I've thought about this, and I was really out of line. I feel so bad. Adam, I spoke to you in a disrespectful way, and I need to ask you to forgive me. I'm so sorry. I need to ask you. That is not how I want to act. And I need to ask you to forgive me. And Austin, I need to ask you to forgive me. You were there, and I was really disrespectful to your brother. And so to grab those guys and hit a reset button that a lot of times people, and I am very grateful to know that, but I watch a lot of times people go, hey, can't we just get over this? Can't we get over it? And a lot of people don't know why they can't, but the answer is no, we can't. We don't want to follow you anymore. We don't want to work with you anymore. We don't, and they don't really know why, and the
Mhm.
person doesn't know why. It's very simple. It's a very little thing. It's a reset button we can push every day if we want.
I think as a leader, it's really easy to be in a situation like that and just say to yourself or to say to somebody else, look, it was just a small thing. I mean, it's not that big a deal. They just need to get over it, right? But the truth is they don't get over it. And unfortunately, those small things can fester and become a root of bitterness and completely drive a wedge in a relationship, ruin a marriage, ruin a working relationship. I mean, I've seen it. You've seen it happen time and time again. So thanks for that reminder. I thought of one situation in your life where some little small thing made a huge difference in your career. And I wonder if you could share with our viewers the story of how The Traveler's Gift came to be published, because it almost didn't get published.
Yeah. This was and it really kind of came from two fronts, because Robert T. Smith, you and I, is one of our best friends, and Robert's the author of 20,000 Days and Counting, but he's been my personal manager for about 250 years.
Since you were in diapers.
Amazing. Yeah, how long we've been together. But I wrote The Traveler's Gift, and I thought it was pretty good. Now, since the book has sold several million copies, it's still in hardback after 12 years. Super Bowl teams have used it. World Series teams, prisons use it. I mean, it's just amazing what has happened in this book. But I say that not to brag. I say this so that people will understand that this book was turned down by 51 different publishers. So I want you to think about that. 51 publishers told me that what I had written was not worth putting on paper. And so from Robert's point of view, he's working with a book proposal, and he's putting it out, and he's trying to keep the results where they don't just devastate me. But there's two stories here. Okay, there's two stories. And so here's Robert's story. Robert's story, and these both happened at the same time. So Robert's story is that he had a meeting with you, just as a friend, not as the honcho
Right.
of Thomas Nelson Publishers, just as a friend. And you looked at it and you said to Robert, you had like 30 seconds and you lost me. You lost me. Is the book ready? You told Robert, I don't know if the book's any good or not, but you totally lost me with the book proposal. Well, there's Robert's end of it. Now, I'm sitting around, and this is where I learned the principle that the quality of your answers will be determined by the quality of your questions. Because I was asking bad questions during this time, and I really feel like I kind of kept us going longer than we should have been going on this, because I was asking questions like, well, is this book not as good as you think it is? And, of course, my subconscious is immediately answering the question, well, of course it's not as good as you thought it is. If it was as good as you thought it was, somebody would have published it by now. Come on, you're embarrassing yourself. Your friends are embarrassed. And, of course, that put me in a position where I don't want to send it out. I'm asking questions like, is this God's way of telling me I should not be doing this? And my subconscious is going, what do you want him to do? Come down, burn a bush for you? I mean, can he speak any more plainly to you? And it's awful. But I was so frustrated that after the 51st publisher, I literally, now not even knowing this was going on with you, right, with you and Robert, right. I am so frustrated. And I said, man, God, how do you go around these guys? The publishers, they own the world. Is there anybody more powerful than a publisher? And just like that, I got the answer. It's like, yes, a publisher's wife. And I knew that coming up, I was going to be at a dinner with Mike and Gail Hyatt. And so I knew that somebody was going to ask. I knew even if Mike wasn't, Gail was nice enough to at some point say, so Andy, what have you been doing? And I said, I've been working on a book about a man whose family is having a hard time, and he goes back into time, and he gets to meet with 7 people who are also having a hard time in their life. He gets to be with Anne Frank in the Annex. He gets to be with Columbus crossing the ocean. He gets to be with Lincoln at Gettysburg, and each of them give him a different decision, a principle that if he puts in his life, things will change. And Gail said, wow, that sounds very interesting. I would like to read that. And I said, I've got a manuscript for you in the car. And she went, oh. And I said, and I went and got it. And I said, now, this is for you. This is not for him. Pointing to you. And everybody laughed. And, of course, we find out later that you guys stayed up all night reading it. Well, she stayed up all night reading it. You stayed up all night because she was going, listen to this part, listen to this part. But the bottom line is, with that proposal, with the help of my patron saint, Saint Gail, the Traveler's Gift became a reality. And so every book that I ever put out, there is always, thank you to Mike and Gail Hyatt that I even have a career.
Well, that's such an amazing story to me, and I love hearing it. First of all, just because of your persistence to go past 51 publishers who said no, and to think of something that is kind of a small thing. Kind of a Hail Mary pass in a way. Giving it to a publisher's wife. And she literally came to me after she read it, and she said, look, I don't interfere in your business. I never tell you what to do, but I'm telling you, you've got to publish this book. And I kind of sat up and took notice. And then I read it for myself, and I said, absolutely, we've got to do this. And the rest is history. But it's a great, great story. I'm going to go back and get some more questions because they're coming in. So if you've got a few more minutes, We'll do some of those. Okay.
Please,
so here's a question off Facebook from Kristen Hansen. She said, I'm trying to decide whether or not to grow the business in terms of volume or stay at same level and focus on improved quality and profit margins and personnel development. Do you have any insights into this decision making? So a real practical situation.
You can never go wrong by building a foundation. And you can also never go wrong by understanding that the foundation is you. People wonder about this concept of personal development. I hear companies paying like just kind of a wave at, we also pay attention to personal development. And if you don't understand why personal development is important, then you don't get it at all, because we compete as people. Remember, the industry standards, the best practices, they're the same. People do business with you because of who you are, not because of what you sell, or at least that is your incredible advantage should you choose to exploit it. And of course, if you want people to really do business with you because of who you are, then who you become is very important. And so this is why, I tell people all the time that I am not a motivational speaker. I am not into motivation. I think motivation is somewhat of a vapor. It certainly has a statute of limitations. I can motivate you, and it'll last until the first crazy thing that happens in your life. I'm not into motivation so much as I am into proof. And I'm not necessarily talking about a mathematical proof. I'm talking about proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That kind of proof where you hear something that you hadn't understood that way and you go, well, that makes total sense. I don't know if I'll ever think of it any other way again. See, if I can prove something to you, if I can give you something that makes total sense, then it has nothing to do with your emotional state. It's not, you're not going to go out on a Saturday afternoon after the conference is over. You're not going to go out chewing nails and then 6 hours later go, what was that about? Why, what am I even thinking? Proof lasts forever. And if I can prove something to you, frankly, you never got to see me again. I hope you want to, but you can take proof and harness it for your own reasons. And if you want the long-term benefits and the short-term benefits, you're looking at one or the other. I say both. I say you can have them both, and you can have them both immediately. You can get on that now.
So she can get on, in Kristen's case, she can get on developing her staff and still grow. They're not mutually exclusive.
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, here's the thing. This is what, if you were my client, Kristen, this is what I would say to you. They are mutually exclusive if you want to grow 20% a year. If you want to do something 20%, 22% a year, because that's what the best companies usually do, is year after year, between 15 and 30% growth. And if that's what you want to do, then yeah, you're going to choose one or the other. But I am after you doubling this year. And if you're going to double this year, then you are going to pay attention to both of them, because the way you're going to develop your staff is by developing yourself, becoming an expert in the why, and explaining to them why, not just giving orders about read this and do this, but dig into why. Okay. And you're going to develop yourself. You're going to develop them. And they have desires for a life of with more achievement and higher sales and all like that. And so your numbers are going to go through the roof when you connect the why of their personal development to the futures that they're after. And I'm not talking about firing them up. Okay. I'm talking about proof. I'm talking about reality. All right. And there, you will be, you'll be competing in a way that your competition doesn't even understand the game is going on, because they're paying attention to the numbers and this and that. You just watch how most people do their conventions. I mean, insurance people, real estate people, year after year after year, they fire them up. They do two things. They fire them up. They bring in somebody who goes, come on, you can get it. Then they train, which means they bring somebody who sold more insurance to talk about people who sold less insurance. Now, let me ask you something. If you look at insurance people, real estate people, you look at any kind of industry, and I've gone in for years, and these CEOs are saying, gosh, we have so much potential. We just don't know. Really. Let me ask you something. Do they know what to do? Yeah, they know what to do. Do they know how to do it? Yeah, they know how to do it. Okay, so why do we think that firing them up and training them to do what they know how to do, why do we think that's going to make such a massive difference? It's got to be something else. And it is us. And what a wonderful thing that we can control us.
That's good. Okay, one more question, and then I've got one of my own. But this one's from Rick Endicott. Great question. What are 3 little things that you do each week that are transformational in your life? So little things maybe nobody knows about, just little practices, disciplines, 3 things that make a difference for Andy Andrews.
Oh, I would tell you, because I have them. One is I read across the board. I run into people all the time that they say, well, I only read nonfiction. Like you read stories. And then some people only read fiction, but I read across the board. And I'll tell you why. I am after who I am becoming. And I also believe that you can read nonfiction to get information, but fiction will fire your imagination in a way that nonfiction will not. And you can know tons of information, but if you don't develop the imagination to use that information in ways other than it's being used, you're never going to get results better than the results you're seeing in everybody else. Okay. So one thing I do is read across the board. Second thing I do is I get up early. It's not easy, but I get up early. And I get up early. I started getting up early just because I felt like I should, because all my reading and all the biographies that I read told me that for some reason the people that were getting up early were getting more done. Now, I do find myself able to concentrate a lot more in the morning, early. George Washington Carver is one of my huge heroes. And George Washington Carver said before Congress one time, and by the way, you just look at George Washington Carver's life, you tell me how in the world one human being could accomplish that much stuff in one lifetime. I'm just blown away. But a big part of it to him was that he would get up early. In fact, he said he would get up before the birds got up so that he could go outside and get his marching orders for the day from his creator. Right now, this leads me to the third thing. And I'm embarrassed to say this has taken me a long time to figure out, Mike. But the third thing I do that I don't think that most people, they would not know that I do, and most people would not really think of this because I didn't for a long time, is I am quiet. Sometimes I'm quiet, specifically after I pray. Now, I'm going to tell you something. You know me, Mike. I am not a quiet person. You know, I do not have a lot of quiet in my life. I'm ADD to the max, and something's always going on. Well, it occurred to me one day that I believe God has a will for my life, and I want that will, and I believe that God wants his best for me, and I want my best for me. But I wonder sometimes, does God have a better imagination than I do? And my answer would be yes. So when I'm imagining what the best for me is, and God is imagining what his best for me is, how big is the gap? And how do I close that gap? How do I hear what I'm supposed to hear? Now, I'm using me because I feel somewhat like a doofus for not having figured this out. But I want you to think about something. Most of your people who are on this with us, these are leaders in their communities. They're leaders in their businesses. What would you think of somebody who came to you and they said, "Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you so much. Just thank you for being in my life. And I just want you to know I need help in several areas with my relationships, my finances, and I just need you to pay attention here and help me. I need, and I've got friends who need help. If you could think about them occasionally, that would be great. But I really specifically, this one thing, the finances, and I really, really need your help. Thank you. See you later." And they walked out the door. You go, what? And then maybe the next day they came back and said, hey, listen, I want to thank you again for being there. And I just still need your help. I was just thinking about this. I want you to keep thinking about it. Please just give me some answers for God. Give me answers because I just need your help. Thank you. See you later. And you walked out the door. You'd think, what is going on? What is happening with this guy? And yet I realized that for years I had been praying like that. I would pray, "Lord, thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are. Hey, Father, please watch over me. Please help me. And Lord, I have some specific things that I'm having a hard time with this. I'm having a hard time with this. And Lord, give me some guidance here. Tell me what to do. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Okay, let me check these emails."
Yeah,
and
great point.
I realized, I think, for a long time, God's going, "Dude, I would love to help you, but you're going to have to shut up." And I realized how many times I had gotten answers to real problems when I woke up. And I got them when I was asleep. I got them in the shower. Mm-hmm. I got them, I'm a hunter, and I got them on, in a tree stand. Now, these are times that was enforced quiet. How many hunters have you heard say, "I'm closer to God when I'm in the woods than I am in a church"? Well, I'll bet you are. It's the only time we shut up. And so the idea, the understanding, the thing that I do, the third of those things that I think has made a big difference in my life is to say amen and be quiet.
Love that. That's fantastic. Okay, I have one last question, and it's really a leadership question. But how can we, as leaders, sweat the small stuff without getting lost in the weeds and micromanaging people?
There is a way. There is a way to cast a vision for the people and still understand that leading requires doing. I have been around people who were true leaders, and I've been around people who were given a title, and there's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see people sometimes, and so I guess the ultimate answer to your question, Mike, is to know what a real leader is, and to understand a why. And that is why people follow who they follow. Why do people perform as they do? Because people do not perform as they should. People do not perform as they are ordered. People do not even perform for the money a lot of times. But people perform for specific reasons. People will follow people for specific reasons. And when a leader begins to understand that you can't, you can't push a rope, you can't nail Jello to a wall, you can't make people follow you if you are not worthy of being followed, and if the vision does not include them. The vision has to include them. It can be articulated by you, but if it is your vision and only your vision, not theirs as well, they won't follow you. I always remember what Joan of Arc said in her first major victory. She gathered her horse and was ready, and she said, we're about to charge, everybody. And one of her lieutenants said, if you head for that wall, not a man will follow you. And she said, that's okay, I won't be looking back. And of course they did follow her. And of course they won. And so many times people who lead, they are micromanaging because they're turning around and they're looking at, and why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing this? And in the back of people's minds, well, you aren't doing it either. And so we really want to lead by doing it, like becoming that kind of person. And the answer is not in the details anyway. The answer for increasing 15 to 20% a year, that can be in those, that can be in the everyday thing. But the answer to true increase, to lasting growth, to growth people don't understand, that always has to do with who you are, who you're becoming, and who you are helping people become.
So true. So true. I can't believe we're out of time. But Andy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Guys, thanks for joining us, everyone. If you guys haven't done so already, please pick up a copy of Andy's new book, The Little Things, Why You Really Should Sweat the Small Stuff. You can get a copy on Amazon by going to the link, michaelhyatt.com/littlethings. And yes, that's an affiliate link, but it'll take you directly to the page. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Michael Hyatt Show. I look forward to talking with you next time, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. I'll be interviewing Inc. magazine's most popular writer, executive coach Lolly Daskell, about how we can recognize and overcome the leadership gaps that keep us from achieving greatness. See you then.